Hi, everybody. I realized my flowers were sort of like awkwardly placed, so we've moved them over so you can actually see them now. I hope you are having a fantastic day. If you're watching live, we're here on Wednesday, March 20th. If you're watching after the fact, welcome. I'm Melina Palmer, host of the Brainy Business Podcast, and I'm here today to talk to you about nudges. The most recent episode on the podcast is about expecting error. And we're also going to be talking a little bit about giving feedback. I flip-flopped, if you've been paying attention, and had E come before G in nudges, just because it doesn't really make sense to have the feedback we give on an error come before we talk about the error. It just didn't feel right. So we are going to be digging into both of those today. And also I'm able to answer any questions that you have throughout the live broadcast, as well as want you to feel comfortable going in and asking your questions after the fact too. So if you're watching this after, feel free to leave your questions in the comments. You can also email me at any time, melina@thebrainybusiness.com, or post your questions to Facebook. Here, do your Facebook comments where you can find me as The Brainy Biz. All right. So expecting error, episode 39 of the podcast, is talking about, in the case of nudges, and knowing that like to err is human, right? We've heard this stated before. So if we know that people are going to make errors, as much as we all wish we wouldn't, we do. And so if you know in your business where people are going to mess up, it's important to put a little nudge in place for them. They'll be very appreciative of it when it ends up being valuable for them. That's sort of the feedback to help them get back on track. So if you think about your car has so many times where it's expecting you to make an error. If you think about the seatbelt dinging, you've probably had this happen before. You're driving, seatbelt kind of goes boop, boop, ding, ding. You don't have me on. That's a reminder. And, you know, it comes to you in a way that is triggering one of your other senses. That's the feedback. So it's not going to be coming up in something that you're already looking at or what you're working on. It's not something that's going to light up on the seatbelt itself because you wouldn't see it. You've forgotten to take advantage of that. But the check engine light might pop on, or, something else to notify you need your oil changed or whatever it is. But they have those sectioned out for really important things, getting the messages, the feedback. Because if you were constantly having dings and beeps and lights and flashing and stuff in your car, you would very quickly start to ignore everything that comes in, and you wouldn't get those life-saving reminders of your tire pressure being low, or you don't have your seatbelt on, or your engine's going to blow up. Those are things that it's important. And when they do come up, you pay attention to them when you see them. And thank you, Laura, for your comment. Welcome to the live here today. I'm glad that you are loving the Nudges series on the podcast. I'm having a lot of fun with it too. And I've been getting feedback from people saying it's helping to feel really actionable by just digging so deep into this concept, and where choice can seem very surface level, a choice seems so easy, where you say, yes, I want air conditioning, or no, I don't. And then as I've been digging in on the air conditioning example, all the places where choice is being presented to customers, and all the different ways that it can be evaluated, the way that you want to frame the message, the way that you want to expect error. In the case of with air conditioning, you're supposed to get the filters, the ducts cleaned every 3 to 5 years. And then how many people do you think forget about that? It's the same as, would you remember to get your oil changed every 6 months if you didn't have the little sticker at the top of your car, or the countdown that's letting you know it's time for an oil change? No, you'd probably forget. As well as being able to know that it's time to change the filter on your refrigerator, or get your ducts cleaned every 3 to 5 years. And you kind of go, when did I do that? Right? When's the last time this happened? And so being able to have the if you can have something happen on a habitual, regular basis, that is the best way to help your customers to not have an expected error. And thank you for your comment there, Lara, that it does get you think about mapping for your business. That's great. I'm super excited that that is what you've been experiencing. And as you said, I've been getting that feedback from other people as well. So thank you. And if you're watching this and feel the same on the replay, give us a like or a thumbs up to let me know that you're feeling that as well. So with the error expectation, if even something as simple as medication. So when you're having to take a medication on a regular basis and it's very important for you, you want to make sure that you take it as prescribed. Is there anybody who would say, I've been prescribed a medication, I need to take it regularly because it is going to save my life or whatever, it's going to have a huge quality of life benefit. But you think, I don't really care if I take it as prescribed. I don't want to. I want to miss days. I want to mess up. No, right? Nobody wants to mess up. That's silly. But our brains get busy and preoccupied. I have the episode on the overwhelmed brain talking all about that. I think it's episode 32. And so when we get busy and preoccupied, we mess up and we make errors, and we can forget to take our medication at the right time or at all. We go on a trip and we left the prescription at home, whatever that happens to be. But if you do have a prescription on a daily basis, you're much more likely to remember than if it was every other day or every 3 days. Or also, if you do take something once a week, they want to take it on Sundays because that's a different type of day versus if it was a Tuesday or a Wednesday. All the days sort of blur together. Speaking of which, what day is it today? I guess it's Wednesday, right? We forget. We don't know what day it is sometimes. And you can't remember once you've taken something a lot, you have that moment of, did I take it today or was that yesterday? And that's where if you have a pill case that shows you, these are the pills I take on Tuesday, these are the ones I take on Wednesday. And if the morning one's open, you've taken the pills for that day. It's just these little errors that that you're going to be having, and knowing for your customers, where are they going to have errors that can extend into your business. So remembering to follow up with you is one. Maybe forgetting to schedule appointments is something that people can do, and remembering that maintenance schedule. Another type of error that comes up for people is post-completion error. This is, if you remember in that overwhelmed brain episode, I talked about how I'm really good at starting a load of laundry, really good about putting that stuff in the wash, and then I always forget to move it over to the dryer. And so then you end up with sort of funky clothes and you have to rewash things because it's far away. I get in the zone for work. I'm doing things and I forget to move it over, or we've got the kids running around, whatever it is. I leave or we go to sleep and forget to move the wash into the dryer. That is post-completion because my brain is set for the task of I need to do the laundry. And once I've started the task, my brain sort of mentally checks it off as being completed. So, hey, I've done that. So that's done. And I forget to sort of add a new item of the list to move the things over. This is also why, so back in the day, if you used an ATM, maybe you forgot to get your card out and you left and then realized that you got the cash and not your debit card back. If you've ever done that, they now have set up where pretty well every ATM, I believe, is now set up. You have to take your card before you can take your cash. So before you can have the closeout of I've got my cash, you have to take the card out so you can't forget it and have that post-completion error. If you were to think about your business, where are the points where someone might finish, start something and sort of mentally check it all off the to-do list? Is that on a project task and maybe it needs to be broken into smaller segments? Are there times where you should be following up with people more regularly? Also, if you have a lead magnet that helps get people, so for me, it's downloading my ebook. So when someone's downloaded the ebook, I can't assume that they've read it. They want to, they have the intention to, they appreciate that I sent it to them, but they're going to forget there's an error there. And so that's why you have a drip campaign reminding them of the ebook and other things that are available, and just keeping constant on people's radar. So you can also apply this to policies and procedures, especially this comes into play at bigger companies a lot, but for anybody. When I worked at the credit union years ago, I was doing some observational research, standing in the branch, just sort of seeing how the staff interacted, what questions people had about marketing, and how the conversations were being worded, the choices of how people would ask questions, and taking that back. And I would use that information for creating future marketing materials. So what I noticed on a series of branches is that we had people who would come up to the front, do their transaction. The teller would print the receipt, rip it off, and say, "Do you want your receipt?" The person in the line would say no. So then it was a crumple, throw it away. And that happened about 90% of the time, that people don't want the receipt. So in this world of, so the error is printing the receipt first and not asking the question of, why are we printing a bunch of receipts that we're going to throw in the garbage, which becomes, extra security burden. You pay for, at a financial institution, you have people that come out and shred all the documentation and materials that comes out. So then it's extra money in shredding, plus the cost of actually printing the receipts, and just a whole bunch of stuff. It doesn't make any sense. Where instead, if you were to say, "Do you want a receipt?" They say no, and then you just close out. You don't print it. Why print? The credit union doesn't keep those in a stack to process like used to back when I worked in retail. I know we had to have the one receipt that goes in our stack and the one receipt for them, and then you recapture everything at the end of the day. Most businesses don't really need to do that anymore. Things are kept electronically. And so this is a setting that is from an old way of doing things, and our brains are just too busy to ask the question. And so the error is that we keep doing it. We keep having these issues over and over again, where it was a simple click, one button change in the back system to set it up so that it didn't auto print receipts anymore. And that's really easy. Laura has a comment. "Love the signs of the grocery store parking lot reminding me to bring my bags in from the car." Absolutely. That's really great. I don't feel like I've seen them. Maybe that's my error, or I live in a place where we're not as concerned yet. I know that we're both in the state of Washington, Laura, but are those in Seattle, or are those over in the Eastern Washington part, or both? And maybe I'm not seeing them, so they're not in a place that I notice, or maybe they're not on my conscious awareness because I don't always bring bags and forget that. But knowing that you want to not leave them in the car, and then you keep reusing paper bags, because in Seattle now we don't allow for plastic bags anymore, and so you end up in this issue where you're not going to tackle that problem, and you end up forgetting, even though you brought the bags all the way with you, you forgot them there in the car. That's a really great reminder, and that's good for the grocery store. And actually, now that Seattle charges for bags, we pay 5 cents for every bag you have to use. If you have one that's reusable, it's nice that you didn't forget it, and then you're not going, "Oh, I forgot that bag again," which can be problematic and no fun. PCC. Yeah, PCC seems like a grocery store that definitely would want to be reminding people. They're very, that's part of their branding. That's a really good point, that they are very worldly conscious. They're green. They're about energy conservation. They are one that's not just doing this because it's the law and they have to. And that's actually signaling something to their guests, knowing that the people that shop at PCC are most likely really energy conscious. They care about the footprint that they're leaving on the world, and they would be more apt to be thankful for that notification from the grocery store than just, run-of-the-mill person who's running in. So that says something great about the brand that's helpful. It is a reciprocity piece, that it's helping the customer to feel this really strong affinity and thankfulness of, "Oh yeah, I would have forgotten those. I'm glad you reminded me, so I'm not having to waste." It's not just about the money for them. It's about the impact on the environment, really, really smart for a grocery store like PCC to do that. I wish I still had a PCC near me, or maybe it's good. I feel like I spend too much money when I go to PCC. They have all the gluten-free items in the world. And for those of you who haven't heard me talk about it on the podcast before, I have celiac disease, so I can't have gluten. And then it's just all the cakes and pastries and cookies and cereals, and it's like gluten-free mecca. I definitely am a big fan of PCC. So it's good maybe that I'm not in walking distance to one anymore. So the other place where this has been really amazing to see unexpected error is at Johns Hopkins Hospital. They put together a very simple checklist to help doctors when they were working on line infections. And it was really silly things, that you were putting in wash your hands before and after, and to put up on a new sterile dressing over the catheter line after you've made the swap. Something that we would all expect our doctors to know and not have that they're needing to be reminded to wash their hands. But as a doctor, you're doing this over and over and over again. You become sort of a victim of post-completion error because you've changed a million sterile lines and you feel like you know what you're doing. Your subconscious gets preoccupied. You're starting to think about all these other things you're doing, where you're going next, how behind you are, what's happening. You get a little bit overwhelmed. Maybe you forget a step, but you don't consciously register because once you've started, you feel like you've already completed. So these checklists got put out in Johns Hopkins, and I'm sure every single doctor would have said they didn't need it and that it wouldn't have any impact on them. And probably patients would think that too. You want to think it's not an issue. But what happened over 6 months is the line infection rate dropped from 11% to 0. Not one line infection after those checklists got put into place. And when they did this study for an additional, I think it was 15 months, they only had 2 total line infections that happened. And it saved like 18 lives and prevented 43 different line infections. And it saved the hospital $2 million just from a very simple checklist that seems like things that everybody should not have an issue with anyway. But by thinking ahead, realizing where that error could be coming in and putting the nudge in place made a big difference. Suggestions for nudges in the service industry. So you do annual reminders of trigger season, the importance of training frontline staff for those in high stress industries. So I know a little bit about Laura's business, as you could tell, because in the way that I was responding, knowing where she lives and things like that. And so trigger season, I'm assuming that you're talking about people being more likely to be stressful and they're more likely to get encumbered by triggers, have a shorter fuse. Laura has a podcast called Difficult Happens, and she helps people get through conflict, difficult conversations, and to have sort of this better life world experience. I've been a guest on her podcast. You can check it out and, go check it. It's difficulthappens.com. So in trigger season would be the tip would be people, I think, knowing that they are more likely to be on a shorter fuse when you have a lot more people calling, or if where you're saying specifically for frontline staff. So the holiday season in a retail location, I would expect is that would be a trigger season in my mind. Also for, financial institutions, I know that often it's every other Friday or Wednesday paydays, or the first of the month or last day of the month, or when like Social Security checks come out. There are different points where you expect a lot. For accountants would be in the busy season where you're going into taxes, things due. And so letting your clients know that, sort of non-urgent. I had an accounting firm that was a client of mine for quite a while. And, we were working on some blog posts they're able to put out, as well as other communications to their clients and customers to say, hey, April 15th is a big day for taxes, but did you know that March 15th is when a lot of business taxes are due? We also have a busy season that comes up at the end of the quarter, and there's a lot. So we get this sort of everything coming together, perfect storm issue to where if you have a question that's non-urgent, it's okay to send it now and get it on the radar, but maybe let us know that this is something you're just pinging us as, hey, once you're free in May, you want to let us know, but to follow up with me, we can get an appointment scheduled on the calendar, and your non-urgent item, which is very important to us, we can be addressing at a time when I can give you the full attention that it deserves. That helps them to feel valued. They know they can still be reaching out to you and letting you know, instead of, as a customer, where I have an accountant, I would be worried about sending them a question or a thought about something that's not related to my taxes when I know that they're busy at tax time. And then as a client, I'm sort of keeping it in the back of my brain somewhere, a note somewhere that I need to ask my accountant this when we finally get on the phone and I know they're out of tax season. And then I'm more likely to forget. I'm not going to call. It ends up being this whole mess because I don't want to bug them. I'm trying to be nice, but that's my error as an employee in many cases. Or maybe I've had an issue before where I asked a question and either didn't hear back or they were kind of harsh and difficult to deal with. So I've learned this from them. And because there wasn't anything up front letting me know that this is a time where you are still very important to me, but I'm going to be busy. But let me know that you have a question and I'll flag it to follow up with later, because I don't want you to lose that. And I don't want you to have to you can free up the brain space. So that can be something that's really helpful as something to do with your clients. And I know for me, with traveling quite a bit for different, conferences, speaking engagements, being able to let my clients know that, hey, there's only a couple days that are available on my calendar in the month of May, which is true. Already, I have almost no time. And so to say, if you're looking to book a session with me and you're going to want to talk about something in May, it's probably time to book it now. And if it's not super critical that we talk about it in May, maybe we put it on the calendar for April and we can get ahead. If it would be a problem to wait until June, or, maybe if it's something that you're not needing until September, October, we could start the conversation in June. That's an okay time, but you probably still want to get it on the calendar now because things get a little bit busy and it's a little crazy right now. So that's a way to help with the error, where if one of my clients, somebody who I have quite a few people on, prepaid engagements, where they do regular one-on-one consulting sessions with me, and if they were expecting that they could just pop in May and get a time last minute when they need it, and then they go and see that it's not available and they can't book a time until mid-June, at that point, it could be frustrating for them. They might get frustrated with me. And it doesn't matter where the error lies, but knowing that it's sort of this pre-feedback of letting them know to not get sort of into the error of expecting that time will be available, and however that happens to work for them. So the feedback is really important. There's a really great example in this week's episode that comes out on Friday, which is on giving feedback. So expecting errors already out. Feedback comes out in a couple days. It's talking about this curve in Chicago where it's really dangerous and there were a lot of accidents on it for a very long time. And instead of trying to help people by, putting big, commercials out of saying be careful on the curve because you need to be taking care. What they did is they painted lines that are perpendicular. So you're driving and you see the lines coming up. And then as you got into the more dangerous spot in the curve, they made them closer together. So it gave this illusion that you're speeding up, which causes your subconscious brain to either let off the gas or tap on the brakes in a way that we all sort of have this optimism bias and overconfidence when we're driving, that we think we're better than everybody else and we're not going to get into an accident. I don't need to slow down that much. And that leads to accidents. And in this case, a lot of fatalities and just a really terrible thing. So painting these perpendicular lines reduced the accidents by like 35% just with a little bit of paint and tricking. Because if you remember from the episode on sight is in your eyes, but vision is in your brain. So this prediction of what's coming is something your brain is constantly doing, and seeing those lines get closer together makes your brain think, oh, I must have pressed a little bit harder on the pedal than I meant to. I'm going too fast. I should slow down. Even though you haven't done anything, it tricks your brain into complying with the speed limit, backing off a little bit, and it really reduces accidents, which is awesome. So definitely check out this coming episode on giving feedback, which is episode 40. Yay, very exciting. And the most recent episode that's already out on expecting error. And after that, there's only one more episode in this series on nudges. So we're almost done. I'm glad everybody's been enjoying it from where I've gotten feedback. And I'm looking forward to chatting with you again next week here on Facebook, where we can be digging into some of your questions, as well as talking about what's going on in the podcast and different areas. So definitely come check back again next week. If you don't already like the page, please like the Facebook page at The Brainy Biz, B-I-Z. We do now also have all the episodes going live on YouTube every week, and we're well over 100 subscribers now. So we have our custom URL. So you can go to YouTube, and the extension is The Brainy Business. So you can find that instead of the big garbled yuck. And you should be able to search for that. If you aren't already subscribed on YouTube, please do so. Click that subscribe button. Would love to have you there, and look forward to chatting with you next week as we continue to talk a little bit about nudges. I'm thinking I might do a bit of a throwback to an episode that was covered before we started digging into these lives. So I have a whole lot of back content to go into, thinking maybe loss aversion or anchoring and adjustment. I just had an article come out on CU Insight, which is a credit union specific group, and I'm going to do a version of it on the blog because it's been really well received, and it's digging into anchoring and adjustment. So potentially I'll talk about that next week. If you have a topic that you would really like for me to feature on next week's live, send me an email, melina@thebrainybusiness.com, or you can leave a comment here on Facebook at The Brainy Biz and let me know, or Instagram or Twitter or wherever, to let me know what you would like to see on that upcoming live. I look forward to chatting with you again next week. And until then, thanks again for listening and learning with me. And remember to be thoughtful. Oh, and Terrence, I'm glad that you enjoyed loss aversion. So remember, everybody, be thoughtful. Have a fantastic Wednesday, and we'll chat soon.